Welcome everyone to our LinkedIn live session on Maersk's ESG and sustainability strategy, decarbonization. So really pleased that you're all joining us, and we're excited to share with you some insights on our work and looking forward to great questions. We thought we would start with introducing ourselves a little bit. So I'm Lene Serpa. I'm head of Corporate Sustainability and ESG at Maersk, and have with me my colleague Julia.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today and also share a little bit around our decarbonization journey. You already mentioned I'm Julia. I'm leading the Logistics and Services Decarbonisation team here in our headquarters in Copenhagen. I've joined last year. Super excited about the journey. My background is in engineering. I've been with management consulting for quite some time. And I must also say, during my time in management consulting, working with energy companies, with transport companies, step by step, I also understood how important decarbonization is. So I'm also a little bit part of, so to say, the converted, but now even more proud to also work for a company and a leadership team that takes that seriously. And very looking forward to all your questions. I hope there are also some challenging. We already received a couple of questions up front, and I suggest we start right away with probably a couple of more generic questions or general questions that enable us to set the scene, and then we can also go more into some deep dives. So maybe, Lene, you also want to say a few words about yourself and then talk about our ESG strategy in general.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. So I'm one of those who've been converted from the beginning, probably you could say, because I've been working with sustainability in companies for over 20 years. And Maersk actually also has a long history of working with sustainability. So it's not new to us, but we are, as many of you also in society, our customers, our employees, our regulators, partners, we all see increasing need to focus and take action to address the sustainability crisis for the world. And so in Maersk, what we have developed in particular over the last few years is a comprehensive ESG strategy. So ESG standing for Environment, Social and Governance. And this strategy is really one that is embedded into our business strategy. So that's really one of the core points that we want to bring across here also is that it is not something on the side for us at Maersk. It is embedded into how we drive the business, into the solutions we provide to our customers and work with our partners. And so concretely, within these overall areas of environment, social and governance, we have identified 14 areas, 14 topics, which all comprise what we consider to be the material social environmental impacts that are relevant to Maersk. So our overall approach is to work towards minimizing potential negative impacts that we as a company may have on environment, on society, and also work to then address potential risks to our business and to capture opportunities that also may be in ESG areas. Within these areas of environment, social, and governance, I think we'll cover some of them through the session, but I think the absolute largest priority that we actually have is our work on decarbonization. That's really because we see that as the area where we, as a business, as a sector as well, both have a major footprint, a major impact on the world, but also an opportunity to really make a difference for society. So maybe, Julia, you want to start a little bit and talk about our work on decarbonization, our commitments?
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, you already mentioned that sustainability overall is key of our strategy. It's a real strategic imperative. And this is not only a commitment to society, but also a clear commitment to all of our customers and all of our partners that we work with, because we see that really as a holistic value that we as a company can bring by also having that long-term goal. We announced 2040 as our new target to be net zero as an overall company. And to be very honest, as a global transportation company, this is a quite challenging target. And we and the decarbonization team are heavily working on not only on our ocean part, but me personally and the team around all the activities in LNS. So that means, for example, logistics and services, transportation, everything that we do on truck, rail or barge, but also our warehouses. We also have teams that work in Switzerland, which is our towage business. So across the company, we have set up decarbonization teams that are really focused on to understand how do we manage the energy transition of our assets, how do we increase also the energy efficiency of the assets, but then also how do we make that transparent as part of the emissions accounting, how do we also make that transparent to our customers, and also make that a journey that that everyone can engage with our partners. And this is a huge challenge. We don't have all the answers yet, and I can already see a lot of questions that address different elements of this. But we are very clear by saying we want to get into action. We already started by ordering the first methanol ships and are getting very much engaged, for example, in green methanol sourcing, but also on the trucking side, we have started to order the first e-trucks, are considering or looking into renewable electricity sourcing. So not considering, we will do that, but it's more a question of how and when. But of course, there's also a management around cost and how we address these different elements. So yes, we are absolutely committed. We know it's a challenging journey. We are absolutely also committed to do the right things, even though in this area there are a lot of things to consider. And I think there's also one of the key messages from our side is that probably not everything will go well, and we will need to see in different areas. We will also learn a lot, because it is early stages, and especially also with all the new technologies that we will see, there are also a couple of problems that we, for example, don't know yet today. So having that said, and also setting the scene, I think there are a couple of concrete questions. So for example, I'm keen to ask, how have things progressed with regards to procurement of methanol and the global platform? And there, I think we had that announcement 2 months ago, where we have shared that we have actually signed a letter of intents or memorandums with 6 suppliers across the globe. So that is, for example, partners in China, in Europe, but also in the US, to establish production plans. And also one of the latest commitments that we also have signed is together with Egypt to also look here into production capacities for green methanol. So things are moving very, very fast. Again, here, one of the key challenges, of course, is to keep sustainability very high on the agenda, not only by the energy that is being used by producing green methanol, but also, for example, biogenic carbon to ensure that the fuels for the future are really eligible to some of the criterions. And this is something that we keep also very much in focus, and it's intensive work going on here.
Yeah. And maybe also just to add to that, because I think one of the really interesting parts about our as you say, our announcements on methanol, but also on the new vessels, is that that we have very intentionally gone out first announcing, of course, our ambitious 2040 net zero targets, and following up with investments in vessels that can sail on green methanol, but even also knowing very well that today the availability of green methanol is not there yet to support those vessels, but actually seeing this as an intentional way of driving the market and taking leadership. So as you say, then we are seeing also we are able to make these sign these letters of intent with the future supplier. So we see that actually that capacity is being built in the market, right? So we have confidence in that.
Good. Should we stay a little bit also more on the broader topics? Yes. Because I think we also received some questions around safety and health and also diversity. So at Maersk, we put that on the sustainability, and maybe Lene, you can also speak a little bit about why this is included and also how we are addressing these topics.
Absolutely. Yeah, and maybe I'll also just a quick word on the terminology, because we actually at Maersk, we do use the word also sustainability in a comprehensive, we understand it in a comprehensive manner as well. So it does for us include also taking responsibility for our societal or social impacts, and also the governance and wider economic impacts. And indeed on the social side of our ESG strategy, safety is one of our overriding priorities. That's very clear to us. It's very important to us as a very strongly values-driven company. That safety has always been very core to our management approach. And we are unfortunately in industries that are sometimes dangerous. And so that's a continuing journey that we are on to build capacity in our organization to improve on our safety efforts. Our overarching commitment is to work towards we can ensure that everyone, all our colleagues are safe, everyone can return home safely from work. And the way that we then, you could say, track that and report on it externally, because of course that's a key part of the ESG agenda, is also to communicate very clearly to everyone, to our stakeholders, to investors, to our customers, etc., to communicate what our ambitions are and to track that and report on it. The way that we actually follow that is by defining leading indicators on, for example, training, on having, on tracking high potential incidents, on doing leader-led interventions with the front line to understand where things could potentially go wrong. So and to learn from that. And so these are some of the efforts that we're doing on the safety side. So very core part of our agenda. We also have on the social side a big focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are in traditional industries, which are still often quite male dominated. Now we have two women here talking to you, so we are in that sense representing the perhaps not the full mainstream of our industry, but I think we have many initiatives underway where we're actually promoting a stronger gender balance, also a stronger nationality balance, and generally just stronger inclusivity around the global company. So those are some on the social side. And should we also, if I just mention some on the governance side?
Yeah, I think we also have here, for example, a question from Søren that asked, which platform do you use to follow if a business strategy is returned to, like the Decide X strategy execution management platform? And then there's also a bigger question about how do we actually make sure that and track that we are when it comes to ESG strategy.
So I'm not familiar with this specific platform that is mentioned here, but I can say in regard to ensuring that we are on track when it comes to our ESG strategy and tracking execution, that's certainly a big important question that we are many people are working on across the company, across all these different topics that we're working on. Of course, Maersk is in general working on we have an ambitious growth agenda. We are investing a lot in developing IT platforms, and it's also being included into that work, into all of our IT platforms. For example, decarbonization as well, and perhaps you can even talk more specifically about that, if you have some examples on that, Julia.
Well, I think this is really about KPI tracking, making transparent what operations we have. And we are working here on global logistics. That means that we have around the globe in more than 130 countries of the world operations. It is in general an industry where some of the data is not always available. So that's also one of the key topics we're working on to create that transparency and also set up systems that enable us to really track what's going on and help also not only by making that transparent, but also by setting the clear targets for our functions and our leaders to take also accountability for the actions. So that is also something that we are at the moment setting up.
Yeah.
I think especially on the safety side, we already have that,
yes.
But also for decarbonization, which is now a new topic for our company, this will also come. And we, of course, are also disclosing more KPIs as we go also to the public with the latest targets commitment, but then also with a updated KPI system at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then at a broader level, coming back to this question of governance, then we have a very sort of structured, I would say, and solid governance framework in place for the overall ESG strategy. So we have defined responsibilities also in our executive leadership team for all the work, all the different topics that we work on ESG. We are committed also to including ESG factors into executive remuneration from next year. So I would say at all levels of the company, we're really working to to ensure that the focus on ESG is integrated into our decision making and reporting as well. Should we take some other?
Yes, I'm just looking through because I think we actually receive a lot of questions regarding the decarbonization and also the fuel. So maybe I can summarize them a little bit. So, for example, there's one question from Michael who asks, he was curious to hear what a company as prestigious as Maersk thinks about the future of ammonia. So that's one topic. And then I think there's also another question from Philip that we received regarding green fuels and whether they will need government support and subsidies or carbon taxes to reach price competitiveness. So maybe to address these two. So when it comes to the fuel needs, especially now talking about shipping, but I think that can also be applied to the aviation industry and also, for example, long distance trucking or also even rail in some cases. Alternative fuels like either biofuels or hydrogen or methanol or ammonia will need to be part of our future energy system in one way or the other. At Maersk, how we think currently around ammonia is that very clearly fossil fuels are not part of the solution. So that's why we also, for example, do not follow any LNG pathway or so. But we are also looking into what technologies are available today. And there clearly methanol is a fuel that is already being used in ships. The technology is available. It is also rather safe compared to ammonia. And in terms of building the technology on the ship, that was a solution that we believe we could implement today. Talking about the green fuels infrastructure in a sec, we also know that especially methanol comes with the caveat that we still need a carbon atom. And ammonia is a solution where we move into a fuel that is without carbon, so that also does not need to be part of the carbon life cycle. It comes with other challenges, especially on the safety side. On the other hand, from a production side, is actually something that is probably something that we can switch a bit faster. So ammonia is still part of our outlook. We are also engaged, for example, in the Maersk McKinney-Møller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping in research projects to establish exactly these or to address these questions around on-ship ammonia, but also the bunkering operations in the terminals. So ammonia is still part of our outlook. We just don't know yet when exactly that technology will become commercially available. Coming then also to the fuel development side. So what we see at the moment happening is that new technologies come into the market, and it's not only on the fuel side, but it's also, for example, on the e-truck side, where I'm working also on a lot. And these technologies are not cost competitive. This is, I think, a clear statement that we need to make. And it's also something that we are at the moment also struggling with to figure out who in the end pays. And of course, we can then discuss the parts is on our end, but then parts is also on customers, and then parts is also on regulators. But in the end, it's also a societal commitment that we all need to do in order to pay for that energy transition. And in order to accelerate, and we really believe we need to get into action now, because in the end, it's now about moving from paperwork into real action. Therefore, we need money. And the faster we can get money into these systems, the faster also these systems will develop. So any kind of support, whether this is now a subsidy for a concrete project, or whether this is also a carbon tax. So there are different regulatory measures, and I'm not the expert on regulatory measures. So this is where we probably need to also invite Simon at some point into his session. But I actually believe in order to move fast, we need some governmental actions. Yes. We just need to be careful about how exactly they are designed, because of course technology also evolves over time, and that's, for example, especially one thing that we see in trucking. How much electrical trucks will we have versus hydrogen trucks is something which is also part of the technology development, which we cannot foresee at the moment. So we are absolutely in favor for government actions that help to accelerate that transition. It's just a question on what exact these measures are, and are they really driving the exact right behavior.
So we are indeed strongly advocating also for a market-based measure, right? And we are supporting that is enacted through the IMO, the International Maritime Organization for shipping, which of course is the global regulator for shipping. And indeed, you were referring to, we also just mentioned that we do. So first of all, for those of you who are particularly interested, you can actually find a lot more information. You can also find videos and webinars that are shared on YouTube and on Maersk.com. You can find our reports online, and information about our positions also on regulatory issues on our website. But in addition to that, we do also plan to have more of these live sessions over the coming months, and we'll be doing that with focus on different topics of our ESG agenda. So there'll be plenty of opportunity also to follow up with more answers to your good questions. I don't think we'll have time to get through all of them today.
And we have talked now about technology. We have talked about some governmental actions. There's also a question which I find actually quite interesting. Elosia asked, what has been the market's response concerning the eco-delivery value proposition? And for those who are not familiar with eco-delivery, this is our ocean product, where we offer emission-reduced ocean transport, currently being based on biofuels, but in the future then also based on green methanol. And we must say that we are actually overwhelmed by the market response. We are actually in the very fortunate position that we have customers that are really engaged and are committed. We see that especially in our lifestyle and retail sectors. But the interest base is actually growing and growing. And I think what we also see here is this is not only private companies being pressured on getting into real action towards decarbonization, but it's also we see more and more our own consumer behavior addressing also or the needs that this is being addressed by the products that we can consume. And this is not only towards how do we transport. I think there are also some questions around circularity. And what we see as company is that like the willingness from us as consumers to focus on products that are produced in a more sustainable way, to procure these products, but also probably to also share a certain part of the cost for those. This is something that will go through the value chain, and this is starting with any lifestyle companies today, but we also see that on now our demand, and I think this is actually a super great development, because that shows that also the action of an individual has some implications, and we should also be aware of that, because that also helps us. The more demand for these solutions are coming into the market, the more we can also increase the offer for this.
Everyone can make a difference.
Yes.
Excuse me. And I think I just want to add one thing also to what you were talking about on the Maersk Eco Delivery product, because I think it's really important also to make clear that this is not an offsetting product, right? So it's based today on sustainable biofuels, and it will then over time become based on other green fuels such as methanol and others. We also, there was a question related to how we work with biodiversity, and I think you've been alluding a little bit, Julia, also to this point about how we actually take a life cycle assessment approach to developing these the future fuels. So we also have policies in place for the biofuels we use today to ensure that we actually incorporate a focus on environmental social impacts across the value chain, you could say the life cycle of these future fuels. So that's one important way we're working with the biodiversity aspect. And then, of course, we are also, it's an area where we're working to understand better how our operations as a company, both on the ocean side and in our land side operations, terminals, inland warehouses, etc. What are the impacts that we have on biodiversity, and to be better able to account for that and again incorporate it into our decision making, both in new investments, in our operations, etc. So I think much more to come in that space.
Absolutely, and we are also not only in the fuels, but also in other investments, like in our warehouses, looking much more now into accreditation of, for example, new build projects, so that we also ensure that these aspects are considered in investments that we do. It is, I think we also need to be honest, an ever-evolving topic, and we are by far not in all the details. So there is still a huge part of work. I think we have also here, for example, a question from Michael regarding mining, and then also the impact from cobalt and lithium in industries. So we know that as part of that journey, there are so many other topics and problems and environmental problems that we need to address. And I think we also need to be transparent here that we don't have the answers for everything yet, but we are committed to work on this. And there is a journey ahead of us. Also, for example, especially working with our suppliers and ensure also that our suppliers and the partners we work with are selected on some different criteria, where we also ensure not only on the environmental side, but also then on the social side, that we are also engaging our suppliers and much more in these practices. Here again, this is being part of a strategy, and we are also starting to work with our contracting elements, and so to bring that more in. But it is something where, it's a market development exercise that we are in, I would say, and since it's a global effort, I think I just try to figure out a couple of more questions. I think we also had a question around Africa, which is of course also from my perspective one of the key topics, because there probably not all solutions will work, but still our local teams are super committed to find solutions, whether it's solar installations or whether it's finding out where we can remove old trucks and have Euro 6 trucks. So there are a couple of very concrete initiatives that our teams on the ground are driving with a lot of excitement, actually. And I think this is one of our key messages also today, that the commitment is there. a lot of topics to discuss, a lot of problems to answer.
Yes.
And I think we also could not address all the questions today.
I think there's a lot of questions that came in, which we didn't have time, unfortunately, to get to all of them today. But I just want to wrap up here and say thank you so much, everyone, for your great questions. We will go through them. We will share, I think, as possible, some of our thoughts on these afterwards. And so just thank you so much, and thank you, Julia. And we look forward to the next session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.